Hey everybody, short intro today using my other program here. So I can't do it any longer than a minute. So here we go. Thanks to everybody for being here once again. As always, thanks to BV for handling everything. It really helps out quite a bit. Get the chat going on here. So today, just some house cleaning. First of all, thanks everybody once again for being here. I'm going to talk about trying to stay motivated on the guitar, which is not always the easiest thing to do for anybody, no matter what level you're at. It's always difficult. It's difficult for me. And so we're going to try to talk about some things that I think try to help me out a little bit with that. Coming up, first thing, I have a new course out, and I'm really super psyched that people really dig it. People wanted this one. It is called Repeated Blues Rock Patterns, or blues rock repeated patterns, excuse me. And it really comes down to those sort of like, I call them the Humbadilla licks or the Skinner licks. Being able to play those, fluently. And I found really, I had a problem with a lot of those licks at first. Not a problem. Like I have a problem with those. I felt like I could play. I had enough technique to play these things fast enough, but I just couldn't seem to do it. So I spent a lot of time like analyzing it and looking through these things and started realizing like, well, I've got a lot of technique, but how come I can't play that thing that the guys in Skinner play really fast? No offense to the guys in Skinner, of course. But I really realized I just was doing it wrong. So the course talks about how to pick things properly, getting your pick hand in the right direction, positioned properly. And they're about repeated licks, about building up some of your speed, but it's not about shredding. It's really about just getting more fluid in your playing. And those licks also expand your vocabulary. So please take a look. It's a great way to help me out, of course, and it's a great way to support the channel and all that. And it is half off if you use the link that BB has put on the side there, and also in the link below. So there's that. Today is brought to you by my good friends over at Watchtower Guitars. We're going to talk about them a little later, but you've probably heard me talk about them. I'm running over a cable. I'm doing a thing you shouldn't do. All right, so I've made a little checklist. I can throw this in. I'll put a link when we're done here. I just kind of came up with a checklist so we can start running through it. So motivation it comes in lots of different forms, or trying to stay motivated. I feel like I have to create different strategies for myself. I think if I do one for too long a period of time, I lose the motivation, or it just kind of becomes old hat, and I end up. You guys get the idea. I can do this great for a few weeks or even a week, and then it's like working out. Sometimes you're like, yeah, I feel really great. I've been working out, or I try to meditate, trying. And I do really well. I really love it, and then you feel good, and then you stop doing it because hey, it feels so good. And then I think practicing can be like that too. We get kind of used to it, and then we just pull back, or the motivation angle. So my first thought here, I'm going to chart up here. One thing that I've been really trying to do, and I know it's not as easy as some people make it seem, depending also, depending on where you live and all that, is to go see live music. Recently, I've seen some great players. Well, I saw it a few weeks ago. I saw Eric Johnson, and I saw Sonny Landreth a few days before that. And I've seen some of my friends play locally. And I went around the corner and saw a band from New York called Big Lazy. It's fun. I think we forget why we picked up the guitar. And for me, the why I picked up the guitar is, I loved it. But it was always, I just loved listening to records, of course, but also hearing other people play guitar. And if you can ongoing theme we're going to come across a little bit is if you cannot judge yourself too harshly, if you don't beat yourself up and you don't constantly compare yourself. I do. These are things that I fight. But if you go, well, that's that person, I'm my own person. So when I go to gigs and I see somebody play well, I find it to be really, really inspiring. It wants me to come home. It might get a little bit of competitiveness built up in me, which of course I have. Every musician I think does, but not one that I find crippling like it has been at certain points in my life. Excuse me. So I just find it fun to go hear someone who's really good at what they do, and that often motivates me to go home and practice. I think it's really, really important to do that. I think we forget, we get lazy, and it's not the same as watching YouTube. You know, that's so easy. But when you're in a room with someone and a band and you're creating music, that is a big, huge, huge factor because it's just the energy. And for me, that is a really good motivator. I'm going to talk about, ones at home as well, but that's a great one. Go find a good guitar player playing in town, or any musician. It doesn't have to be a guitar player. It can be motivated by lots of different things. But I think that's good. I also love to get your comments and all this stuff too, and your input, and see what you guys think as well, of course. So I'm going to run through my list, and we'll start doing that. So going to see shows, going to see a guitar player. It doesn't have to be an arena show. I just mean the local guy. If there's a good guy in town or a woman in town playing, go check him out. Any instrument, any good band. It doesn't have to be a guitar player. But for me, I just love that. I love just going to see somebody play, and I find it inspiring, especially, if you get that kind of connection. All right, the number 2 is to take a lesson. I still take lessons with people, or I just get together with friends and I clearly say to them, show me that, or show me something. Look, I think my courses are great. They're the best courses ever put out ever. They're great. I think courses are awesome, and those are motivating as well. But I think having a one-on-one lesson, and it doesn't have to be a weekly thing sometimes, it just needs to be with somebody. If you go to this gig and you hear somebody play and you really like their playing, like, do you give lessons, or would you like to get together once so I can pick your brains and offer to pay them? Often guys will take you up on that because most musicians will need the money. And also, you're saying to them, I want to pay you for your time. There's nothing I love when people say to me, hey, let's get together and jam. I'm like, you know what I do for a living, right? So that's something I think it's kind of, people say that at gigs a lot. Oh, we should get together and jam. I'm like, really? Okay. It's what I do for a living, so that's always if you're going to approach someone at a gig, it's important that you approach it in the right way. Anybody you say you want to take a lesson from them is usually pretty flattered by it. And I think what's really nice to go into a lesson is if you're armed with maybe you have an idea of something you want to work on. Sometimes it's, if you walk into a lesson and say to a teacher, like, well, what do you want to show me? Because then I would say, okay, well, let's play for a bit. And a good teacher will analyze what you're doing. But if someone was doing something you particularly liked, you can say, can we talk about that? I find that that's really cool because then you're kind of getting what you want. And I think there's so much stuff to work on. There's so many YouTube channels like my own showing you how to play guitar. There's all these amazing guitar players on YouTube, and there's all these amazing courses out there. And there's all these things, and sometimes we can get really distracted by all the shiny objects, myself included, for sure. So if you just pick one thing. So if it's a guitar player who did something you really like, that's one thing I like to do is go to, if I hear somebody play, I really like your chords. I just want to talk about your chord playing, or something like that. So that's big. And, preferably you can vibe out if somebody's kind of cool or not. You do want to take, there are those teachers who are not great teachers, and they can be, I'm sure you've had this when you were younger, that the teacher who said something to you and you were like, oh. Like I remember one of my early guitar teachers, this guy was a jerk. Really, I'm just a jerk. To say to someone, I was showing him tapping, and he was like a real jazz guy. He's like, Jeff, you're a magician, not a musician. I can't get that stuff right. And I'm like 14, obsessed with the instrument, and this jerk says that. You know what I mean? Like, he's just, that's not motivating, so find someone that you think is going to be a positive force, you want someone to be honest, but there's no reason to be, some people do that, they purposely make you feel bad. I think that just makes them feel better about themselves, if you know what I mean. So I don't think that that's cool. All right. Jam with other people. I can't stress that one enough either. And if you can, maybe jam with somebody or other people who are just a little better than you, because then you kind of push forward. If you're playing with people who are completely miles ahead of you, if they take you and let you do that, that can be rough because then you start to feel really inadequate, and it's no fun for you because I don't know about most people. You get very in your own head, and then you're like, oh man, I can't. I'm terrible. I shouldn't be here. And then you start to do the downward spiral of in your own nonsense. So if you get some people together with people who are maybe a little bit better than you, that's really, really helpful. Or you get to people who are willing to do these things together. Okay, so other things that are interesting, just on that, I'm just kind of riffing on those certain things that were cool. If you have a bunch of guys that you play with, like maybe hopefully a bass player and a drummer, and I'll be honest, if your drummer is really, really bad, it's going to be very difficult. He's the guy, if he's playing and his time is really bad, that's going to make things tough. Just because if the time is all over the place, it's just tough. I'm just going to lay that out there. If they're actually okay, what's really fun to do is go in and you have a song, say if you're working on blues, and then you work on something specifically, like, oh, let's work on dynamics. Because a lot of people don't practice it. They think these things will come naturally. So when you get together and you go into with like an idea of how to practice something, oh, we're gonna jam, let's play a blues, but let's try to make it as low as possible, to kind of keep the dynamics down and build it up. To me, that's very motivating because you're creating a live thing, something in the moment. And to me, that's the greatest thing about music. I mean, if your gig has to have copy guitar solos exactly, fine, that's a job. That's can be fun if it's a job, but improvising is the most fun for me. And improvising with people who are good is even more fun. And that's on the idea of motivation. When you're getting together and the other guys are starting to kind of get good and you're trying to get that time to get together and you put it aside and do it and you have something to work on and you notice you're getting better, that to me is really a big motivation. When you're like, man, I'm actually starting to sound pretty good. Let's do this again, next week. I know demographic of most of my friends here, everybody here. It's hard. I understand, you might have families, you get home from work. It's hard to find local people to jam with. I know all about that. All my friends are professional musicians. So if let's get together and jam, everybody's like, well, I got a gig that night or I'm working or, you know what I mean? So it's very difficult. So I understand that these are, these are things that can get in the way. So if it's not a whole band, if you just got a friend you can jam with who plays any other instrument, it's going to be great. Okay, so I think that's one thing that I don't think people think about too much is jamming with people can be fun, but working on specific ideas can be a lot more fun at the jam as opposed to playing the song exactly verbatim like we're playing Brown Eyed Girl or something, and you have to play exactly like the record. Who cares about that if you want to build up on being able to play, Okay, I still do this all the time. Learn a new song of any level. Always learn new tunes. I go back and do this all the time. Oftentimes, I'll learn something that I had initially learned incorrectly, and it always turns out to be a Zeppelin tune because Jimmy Page always plays something way cooler than I had assumed. Or you start to dig deeper into the tune. You always find something that's really new. And it can always be, it doesn't have to be a difficult tune like, oh, I'm really working on this, Yngwie Malmsteen tune, just throwing something out like the really super technique. I'm talking about one of my favorite rock bands of all time is Creedence Clearwater Revival. Just learning how to play a Creedence Clearwater Revival song well. The groove on those songs. So that is a motivating factor for me too. And I'll just put on the record. And my goal is to be able to play it like the record as best I can. So what you're doing there is you're building up your vocabulary. You're getting better. You're building up your repertoire. So if somebody says, hey, you want to jam? Sure. What songs do you know? Because come on, guys. How many songs do you know top to bottom? I'm just throwing this out there from experience. I remember my mom paying for guitar lessons and saying to me hey, can you play us a song? And I'm playing the riff to Crazy Train and trying to tap or something. most guitar players or most students that I know, I don't know, I'm making a judgment of my experience here, is most people that I've encountered that come to me for my lessons don't know complete songs, which was a real shocker to me. And I think I'm sure I've mentioned this when I first went to New York. I started going to jams and like a rock jam, and they would call like "Oh Darling" by the Beatles, and I wouldn't know it. And that's a real motivator. The embarrassment on stage, you get called up, and you're like, "Oh, you want "Oh Darling," and you're like, "Uh oh." You start playing. I'm like, I should know that. Now there are like standard rock, and they've changed over since when I was doing those things. But there's standard rock repertoire that you should just start working on, stuff that you love. People are not going to call, some crazy rock tune that you wouldn't know. Usually, jam tunes are something that are somewhat, or tunes that people call are somewhat well known and jammable. No one is going to call a Tool song to jam on, or if we go a little earlier, no one is going to call a Rush tune to jam on. They're just not, because it's just too much work. It's not something people can get together. Oh, do you know how to play YYZ? Yeah, I know how to play YYZ. That's right. And then I don't know what you're talking about. Like, so it's going to be the rock standards. And same with blues. So learn as many as you can. The blues ones are great because what differentiates a lot of blues tunes from each other is the riff. And I've said this many, many times, many times. I've done pickup blues gigs and not even tooting my own horn. People are like, oh, wow, I can't believe how many songs you know. And I'm like, what's my job? So knowing the Little Walter repertoire, like a bunch of the tunes, knowing Sky is Crying, or like know the riffs, because those are the blues tunes. It could be the same chord progression generally, but it's the riff and the feel. So that's pretty important. Also, no song is too easy to play. I used to have a bit of that hubris of like, people are talking about Creedence a little bit right there, or Hey Joe, like that. I've been learning how to play Hey Joe. Phil just mentioned Hey Joe. Playing that like Jimmy, playing that really cool is not easy. It's just C, G, D, A, E. Not a very difficult chord progression, but to get that to vibe right and play it well as opposed to just strumming the chords. Another song that was always the telltale, and I used to play it really terribly, would be say something like Funk 49 and getting that groove just right. People play it, and if you don't have it together, it doesn't sound good. So you want to play it as like the record as you possibly can. And to me, that's motivating because you're learning more tunes. You get together with people, and you've got a catalog of tunes. It's awesome. Okay. Now, people always say learn other people's guitar solos. I am fully behind that. But what I would say is don't necessarily learn the whole solo. You don't often have to, especially if it's a larger solo or a longer solo. That can be very discouraging. It can take a really, really long period of time. And you may not get as much from it as you may think. So when I'm learning a guitar solo now, I'm usually just stealing a lick or two from somebody that stands out to me. I just kind of was working on a Scott Henderson lick from Dog Party, the song Dolomite, the big, really cool lick. I'm not going to play it now. I just transcribed it, and I don't have it all on my fingers. It's like that I've wanted to learn forever, and I was just said, man, I haven't done anything new. I'm going to check out that lick. And I just kept at it, and, didn't stop. But for me to learn that whole solo, which is like 3 or 4 times through the blues, it's going to take too much time for me to do, and too much, I don't have that much time or motivation to learn the whole thing. It's huge. It's hugely long solo and can be difficult. So, and I don't want to be sounds arrogant. I don't need to do that, kind of know what he's doing through having learned simpler solos, blah, 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 blah. But there's always that little thing that you want to learn how to do that somebody's done. So if you learn a few bars, and that makes it very, very digestible, and then you start to try to use it. And then when it starts coming out and you're playing, you're like, oh, that was cool. As opposed to, well, I can play this whole solo note for note. A great solo I talked to all my students about, it's Strange Brew by Cream. It's basically Clapton's ripoff solo of Crosscut Saw, right, guys? Pretty sure, from Albert King. But like a lick like, Clapton does that there. And that lick, once you learn that, you're like, wow, well, Robin Trower plays that same lick in Bridge of Sighs. Where else am I thinking about? Yeah, and bridge size, right? Right, it's just playing the same lick, but just in a different position on a fingerboard. So all those ideas you can start to break through. That little lick will open up a lot more doors than, say, learning the whole solo top to bottom. Now, if you want to do that, I'm not saying you should not do that. I'm just trying to be realistic that a lot of times people get really overwhelmed by how much that is, and then you just get bummed out, right? You're like, oh, it's too hard, man. I'm just going to give up on it. So just little piece and start working on it. And if you find your motivation waning, then just stop and just learn that thing. Okay. This is a hard one. I try to do this. My schedule is maybe different than my hours are different than, a regular 9 to 5 job. So I try to practice first thing in the morning. So set a practice time and stick with it and try to make it a ritual. I find for me to actually feel good on the instrument as a professional, and it always gets this in, is I need at least an hour a day. If I can get 2 in at least 5 days a week, I feel pretty good about it. That's a lot of time. So if you can only get in a half hour, it's great. It's fine. I'm a professional, and the first thing that goes for any musician is their chops. So I do want to keep my hands going. But when I'm doing a course, I'm putting together, it's quite a lot of time, a lot of effort. So I haven't practiced for the past week or so, really pretty much at all, because I was putting together a course, filming it, editing it, and then you're doing that all day, and then you're doing, I have to retake that one, I got to redo this, and then the marketing, and then all the back and forth. And then you're like, oh, the whole week's gone. I've got a life, I got a family, got to go see things, and so there are times where I can't do it. But if I find myself, if I stick to that time every morning, if I try to turn everything off, all the electronics, YouTube, everything, mute your phone, and just try to work and hit that same time every day. I think for me, I know that's when I notice when I get better. I can be more creative at night, when everybody's in bed. The problem with me is I'm a night owl, but I like getting up early conceptually, because I get better work done intellectually on the guitar in the morning, but I play more creatively in the evening, if that makes sense. Like I can write songs better in the evening or something. So coffee is a big motivator. I think there's a whole theory that the whole Enlightenment period came around because coffee and caffeine made its way into the modern world, which is interesting. Because you think prior to that, everybody was drinking mead and everybody was drunk. So it's a really cool theory. There's a book I read on caffeine, and they're talking about that. They believe that the Enlightenment in Europe came around the same time when coffee and tea made its way into Europe. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Makes sense. Have that cup of coffee, which is one of my favorite things, and just practice. That works great for me. That steady time. Also, then going in, the other motivating thing is if you go in with a practice plan, this is what I want to practice ahead of time, as opposed to you sit down and you're like, okay, 8,000 things that I can work on. And you start looking through, what am I going to work on? If you're making your coffee, like, okay, I'm going to work on this, or make notes. That's very helpful to me. I want to work on this. I want to work on that. I've never been very good at I'm not a good list guy. Like, I wish I were. I think I'd get a lot more done and be a much more efficient person, probably a better guitar player, had I been able to make practice lists and follow them. And I'm just not really great with that. So I'll just take an idea. I want to work on repeated blues rock licks and then start working on that. I'm going to take a few licks today. I'm going to start working on those. That's my goal for the day. If I've got 20 minutes, I'm just going to make them better. Just going to work on that thing. Triads, like my courses, something like that. Walking, I'm going to work on my triads. I'm going to work on them in one position. I'm not going to try to conquer the whole neck today. I'm going to work on the 5th fret. And that makes things much easier. And I find that's more motivating because you're not walking in thinking, Oh man, I got so much stuff to work on. I don't even know where to start. It's like for me, that can feel a bit like I don't know about you guys when at night I turn on Netflix or Amazon or something, and I'm like, there's so many movies. I spend like 20 minutes thinking about what movie or something I want to watch, and by that point, I don't want to watch anything because everything looks like it stinks. And you spent like a half hour looking through everything that's on there, and you're like, oh, now it's like a half hour later. I don't want to start a movie. I don't know about you guys. That's the way I get. And I find that way sometimes practicing can be like that as well. So if you can make a little bit of a list and don't make it an overwhelming list, little things are going to make the biggest improvements in your playing. And when you find that little thing kicks in, I find that to be much more motivating than feeling defeated by all the stuff that you think you should be working on. All right. I got a few more. Um, and this is a common thing. You don't expect too much of yourself. Like, what are you comparing yourself to? I'm guilty of this, guys. Some of my friends are, and it's, I am in rarefied air with some of the people who are my friends, all my guitar players friends, whether they're named guitar players or not, whether you know them or not, are all ridiculous guitar players. Whether it's my friend Angus, or it's Robin Ford, or it's Matt Schofield, or just, any of these guys. All my friends, professional guitar player, are all great. So it's hard not to compare yourself to them, but I often just try to find what it is that is my strength and what I can do, and use that as a motivating factor. And for me, I'm hopefully confident enough in some of my abilities that when I hear somebody play really well, I know I can play well. I know that. I'm not going to be falsely modest, but I know there's always things I can work on, and that guy might have done something unique, and I'm like, I'm gonna steal that in the way I can, you know. Like I did some stuff with Matt Schofield recently, and he's brilliant, and he's a great friend, and he's like one of my favorite blues guitar players in the world. And it's just hearing him play, and I'm like, okay, his hands sound really, really great. I'm just gonna work on my hands a bit more, like how I sound. I think I've got good hands. I've worked hard on it, but it could always be better. Like Michael Landau, I'm a huge fan. Hear him play, or Robin. These guys are like, do I sound as unique sonically as they do? And so that's something that I would choose to work on, as opposed to being like defeated by it. I'm going to take in like, okay, let me see what I can do to put this together. And I find that motivating. So that's this next thing is what I'm going to say. It's like, don't compare yourself to other players too much. You, as a human being, you have you have something to say. Now, yes, there is a barrier to get through that. It's where you can express yourself on the instrument, but it should be fun. I still consider myself, of course, the language is all different. I still consider I'm an eternal student on the instrument. There's always going to be somebody who's better than me, whatever that means. There's always something to learn, and I'm just as excited about picking up the guitar for that reason. So if you take this, and if you force yourself to be optimistic, I'm a big believer in this as I get older, that you can, I don't want to sound Patrick to hate when people like, just choose to be happy. Like, well, if you have clinical depression or you're like, there's horrible things, apart from those things, like I can choose to say like, this is really great. I'm going to take a really positive approach to the instrument, as opposed to beating myself up with everything you play as you go through it, and just have negative thoughts, because they just compound. And I don't know, I'm wired to be negative. I think most people are wired to be super self-conscious, and I think, and most people who are not that way are, I think, unusual. There's my reminding me to do my advertisement for Watchtower. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, usually the person who's that, like, yeah, everything you do is great. Yeah, everything's great. Like, they're something a little weird. I think most people I know have a lot of self-doubt of what they do, but you can kind of change that around and say, yeah, I know I'm not always loving it, but if I keep on practicing, it's just going to get better. And I try to remain positive about practicing, because it is the coolest gift I've ever been given by the universe, is to find the guitar. Since 7th grade, it's the only thing I want to do. It's the only thing that moves a needle on me. If I'm in a bad mood, I just pick up guitar and start playing it. So if you, at whatever level, I've always felt that way. So I think if you keep that positive attitude, that's the thing you can convince yourself of, right? There's like all those studies about that kind of stuff. And, expressing gratitude about it. And I'm not trying to get new agey, just like, yeah, wow, play guitar. It's a lot of fun. I'm having fun right now. I'm going to have fun. And it just makes it more fun. It just does. All right. Simple practice things that I find really, really work for me. Working on bends, vibrato, work on certain things, right? Like sitting about like, okay, those little things that can make you sound better. I talk about stuff a lot. Bends, vibrato. Those little things that seem little that most players overlook that I've encountered, most students have, I know I did for a long time. If you can work on the things like getting your phrasing together, working a little bit on your bends and vibrato, you just start sounding better. And to me, that's the coolest thing. If I hear somebody play guitar and they're not, ripping or whatever, I don't care. If someone can go, you just kind of get a phrase together, some nice vibrato and bends. That to me is time well spent. And then if you record yourself, in my corner of my eye, somebody talk about recording yourself. Yeah. Record yourself, listen back. Some days you're going to be really bummed at what you hear, but if you stick with it, you're going to hear some improvement. And then you can really critique what it is that you're playing. This brings me back to playing along with records. I didn't mention that. That's one thing. I always play along with records, especially live records. I really like playing along with the live records. For me, a few big ones was always, any of the live Cream records. Really, really huge for me. Cream, Wheels of Fire, Live, Volume 1, Volume 2. There's all sorts of stuff that there's out now. The reason why is they just jam. And you can just jam along, and it's primarily largely pentatonic in, at that period, any period of Clapton. Any live record, great. Allman Brothers Live at the Fillmore. Like a jammier record. So you can sit there and play along, as opposed to, you could play along with a Black Sabbath record, which I did all the time growing up. That's a little different. I'm talking about just jamming along with the record and soloing, kind of bouncing off what Clapton's playing or Song of the page, just trying to get the phrasing and what was that vibrato? Let me just pick up that vibrato and lock in. That's really helpful because when you're jamming with people at a really high level, common thing for jazz musicians, you just put on one of those great records and you just play along with it. It's huge. That's what a lot of people, and transcribing of that stuff, but just jamming along and then getting those jam alongs, but playing along with a Miles Davis record or Coltrane or something like that. Playing along with a Robin Ford record, playing along with a Matt Schofield record, playing along with a B.B. King record, not with the intent of trying to copy them, but just jamming with them. And some stuff's going to rub off. And to me, that's a ton of fun. That's a lot of fun. Okay, so the bends and vibrato, those little things, super, super important. I think the last thing, there's really kind of silly stuff. It's not silly stuff at all, actually. Change strings. Definitely change strings, because dead strings you're playing, you put on new strings. I find, this guitar sounds like crap, and I put on new strings, I'm like, oh, this guitar sounds awesome. There are things that can be motivating, but they're short-lived, like new pieces of gear. Sometimes you get a guitar that is not like this one or something, it's not worn off. It's been a really great motivating instrument, 'cause it's such a great instrument. Don't expect the piece of gear to change everything, but oftentimes a new guitar or a pedal or a plug-in or something can be really fun and motivating as well. I mean, don't get into hock for something like that, but that can be really, really helpful. Okay. Take a little break, and I want to get your questions, and then we can talk about anything, but I want to talk about my great friends at Watchtower Guitars. I need some music in the background. So I'm going to read some of this brought to you by my friends at Watchtower Guitars, who are a fantastic store. The link down below. They're in Morristown, New Jersey. And you see me do some videos. If you look at my amps at volume, I did at the store there. It's run by my friends Steve Wassel and my good friend John Skibick, who is also in the video. You can check them out. At the moment, all pre-owned PS guitars are 15% off at the shop and on Reverb. So you can go some great deals there on guitars. All their stuff is really well curated. Also, they've got a great selection of Two Rock. I got a whole list here. Two Rock amplifiers, PRS, Germino, Rev, Amplified Nation, Tyler, Magnetone, and more. And in terms of new guitars, they have the full line of PRS, Music Man, Novo, Danacaster, Nacho, and they're carrying Tuttle guitars at the moment too. So that's pretty awesome. Great selection of used Gibsons and Fenders. And the guys they really know their stuff. So they're only, every time I go in there, I'm like, can I have that guitar? How much for that guitar? So really great selection. And it's a really great, unique store if you get a chance to go there in person. It's in a house, very great environment, all sorts of stuff there. Great experience. On a personal note, they are carrying some really fun stuff. The full line of Vemaran pedals, which you guys know I'm a Vemaran user. I got the new Booty G and Landau pedal, and you guys know I use the Shanks ODS pedal. We got that. The R Weaver effects, I use their stuff, and he's got the Dumbleoid, which is great. This whole by Shins Electronics. So definitely give them a buzz. If you don't see what you like on the website, go over to the link below for Watchtower Guitars. And don't forget, all pre-owned PRSs are 15% off in the store right now. And yeah, tell them I sent you. So there you go. Great guys. I know it sounds like it is an ad, but I just love that store. The reason why I love that store is they're great guys, really honest, and we're friends. And they know if somebody goes to them and it ain't right, and I sent them, I'm going to be mad, and vice versa. So there you go. All right. So, any questions? So I think if you put my name, like the question, as BB's always saying there. So, okay, I was going to look back through and see some of these questions here. Want to say hi to everybody. Of course, hey, Chris Butler, what's up, man? We met the other night. So Rick Beato the other night, last night. And the previous night, I did Keith over at 5 Watt World, did a little bit of a get-together at a bar in New York, and I joined him over there. That was fun. Fun meeting people. Rick was fun last night. Full house. Good for Rick, of course. Jason Carter, Phil Jones, Brett. I'm gonna mess with people last. Richard and Sarah, all the crew. Everybody, lots of people here right now. So please, David Cromwell, questions would be great. Chris Butler, like I said there. All right, let me see if I get some questions here. Oh, anybody see Phil McKnight trying to pronounce my name in his recent video? I don't think my name is that hard to pronounce, but everybody butchers it all the time. Now, it really should be McCurlin. So when the guys at that pedal show call me Jeff McCurlin, I don't correct him because that's really what it should be. And my family is from Scotland directly. My parents are from Scotland. My relatives live there. I don't know why we say Mackerlane with an A-M-A-C. I don't know. It's not been Americanized. They came over saying that from Scotland, so I have no idea. Just going to roll with it. So if somebody who I'm not really, if somebody calls me McCurlin, I don't correct them. Him trying to pronounce my last name was quite funny. He's like, I'm going by phonetics. I'm like, that's not phonetics. That's not. But I appreciate it. Phil I like his channel. I think he does great stuff, and it was funny, and he had a good time with it. And I appreciate him giving me the shout out. If you're not, I'm sure you're familiar with Phil's channel. It's really great. Okay. You're pleased that Jeff put his name in the corner. It's funny. This program will not allow me to not fill in that little name box right there. It won't let me do it. So I was going to put something like Mark Twain or something there, you know. All right. Let me jump down here. Oh yeah, also don't want to tell you, like I think I mentioned that Watchtower does have the full line of Ron Ellis pickups, man. I know they're not inexpensive, but boy, what a great sounding set of pickups that Ron makes. So they have them over there. Okay, Michael Jabert, it's just yeah, dynamics with the band, but it made me think of dynamics on your own too. Now, I'm going to pitch another course. I've got my solo blues guitar course. And one of the big things I talk about in that course is just being able to kind of, So practicing something with dynamics, even on your own, I should have brought this up, but you guys are familiar with the channel. The solo blues has been a huge, huge benefit to my playing because you don't have to worry about a band. You don't have to worry about playing with anybody else. You're just developing the dynamics on your own. So I would recommend my course, but that's one thing that works really, really well. All right, jumping down here. Okay, this is finding somebody better than me would not be that hard. That's pretty funny. Still, get the idea. I know you're joking, but give it a shot. I'm motivated by all the hot licks. What was that? I'm motivated by all the hot YouTube and TikTok chicks wearing bikinis and playing Iron Man. Not quite what I've meant to post there, but yeah, it is a funny phenomena. It is. I didn't read that one all the way through, but it's funny. All right. BB said always great stuff that BB says here. The one thing at a time, take it alone, is somebody who skips quickly from one thing to another and nothing really sinks in. It can become right. You just have to take one thing at a time, and there's only so much we can take in. Look, I'm trying to learn Italian, and man, it's not easy. So I have to learn very slowly, and then I got to go start speaking with my friend Hermano or James to start to try to actually do it for real and speak to somebody who speaks Italian better than me, which is not hard to find, not difficult to find. So pretty funny. All right. There we go. It's good. It's a good comment here right now. Staying motivated was keeping it fun. As soon as music feels like work, I really think I'm approaching it. I already have a 70-hour-a-week job. I don't need another one. Yeah, right? Absolutely. It's a great point, and that's more succinctly put than I was saying. Yeah, you want to keep it fun because, it should always be fun. And the only time music's been really stressful for me, besides making a living with it, has been if you have a really difficult gig or when I was in college and you had finals, where you had to study all that stuff. So that was the only time it was really stressful, So it's a good point. Run it down here. Sorry, guys. I don't want to skip anything. Michael Cope's always got something to say. Okay. For me, I always enjoying personal performance or recording deadline to work towards something that I just beyond my reach. Yeah, right, Michael. It's really, I know you do that, Michael, when I work together. And you're really good at that. You create, I want to write a tune and I need to get it done by this time. And it's really cool. So if you set a goal, if you want to work on songs, I have a hard time writing songs unless I have a reason to write songs because, let's just be honest, me writing songs doesn't make me any money. Right? So courses and YouTubes and gigs and these things are the things that generate my income. My record didn't really generate a lot of income. And it was great. I love doing it. And there's a creative angle. But so for me, I have to kind of prioritize these things. And sometimes if you're shooting courses and trying to be creative as an instructor and have good quality educational material and all these things, the creative angle goes away. So the record with Robin, when Robin said, hey, let's do a record together, we have to do it in like 3 months or else I'm going on the road for a few months. And I won't be able to do it for another 2 years. I'm like, okay. So I had to write as many songs as I could within that period of time. And so it was a created deadline. So that was good. So whether you can create a deadline that is real or imagined, if you can make it work, that's great. Thanks, Michael. That's a great one. There you go. Perfect. Mike Doctor, I get up way too early o'clock to practice for a couple of hours every day. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but it's my favorite part of the day. Yeah, it's my favorite part too. Because I'm not getting phone calls. I don't. It's just it's me time. It's quiet. My dogs are usually just kind of still sleeping. All those kind of things. So I get it. That's when I find it's best for me and the caffeine. Later in the day, I feel like I got to make phone calls or work or all these things. I mean, I feel like I got to work every day, but you get the idea. Early morning jams make your day much better. Nothing happens without coffee. That is so true. Um, so what else we got here? Okay, get through some questions here. Oh, Phil Jones, I have a list, by the way. I walk. Okay. All sorts of things. Sounds of New York City. All right. Okay. That's kind of funny right here. The old Netflix 2 hour flick through. Oh, forget it. It's real, isn't it? It's so annoying. And you're like, oh, and then you end up watching something you already watched before. I don't know how many times I've watched the Lord of the Rings extended, you know, you know, Lord of the Rings extended movies because you're like, I'll watch that again. I know it's good, and I'm such a nerd for those movies. Not the Hobbit ones, though, just the Lord of the Rings ones. There we go. Oh, Doc. Like again, great comment. That's right. You can work through something over and over again and not see much improvement. And then all of a sudden, bam, you can do it. Oh, super huge, right? It's a really good point. Thank you. Two good points. I need a bell. Ding. Also, I've talked about this in pretty much every course that I do, is if you just concentrate even on one hand, or there's been scientific studies, I can't quote them right now, that I like learning about this stuff, that because I want to learn things better, is if you run through something that you're working on mentally before you go to sleep. That's pretty, and it's supposed to help sink in. So you're laying in bed, just before you go to bed, if it's something you're working on, a fingering, a lick, a scale, whatever it is, if you run it mentally through your head a number of times, that's supposed to help. The thing that helps me quite a bit if I'm working on a scale, or I talk about it in that repeated licks course, you need just looking at your right hand, Like, so seeing this hand, getting that technique together, the pick handle, staring at your hand and just concentrating on that one thing helped me out quite a bit. And then I'm going to look at the left hand and just take it in. Is everything right? It just seems to make that mind-body connection for me that I wish I had known earlier. And for the past, I don't know, a few decades, I've been doing that, and I find it to be really helpful. And then you start, then suddenly the next morning, I go, wow, I can actually play that. Okay, let's go now. I'm just jumping down here. Oh, right here. That's good. Okay, got a question. Great. Do you have any tips for helping you remember licks, etc.? I finally learn licks and I can quickly forget them. You have to apply them. And then eventually, licks. Okay. I know I call this the new course blues rock repeated licks, and my previous course was foundational licks, just because a few things. Real honestly, if I said foundational blues rock phrases and concepts, people would be like, but if I say blues licks, people are like, let's do it. But in the course and in this one, licks are cool. The idea of a lick is cool to learn it, but eventually you want it become part of your vocabulary. And I don't think about licks when I'm playing. I don't think about licks at all. I just play. But at some point in the beginning, maybe they were licks, and then the licks start to become your own. So if you keep on repeating those ideas, whether it's a repeated lick, like I was talking about in this new course, or if you're talking about a phrase, a longer phrase, or like a traditional blues lick, you just start to try to work it into different positions and different keys and just really beat the crap out of it and keep on coming back to it. And eventually what starts to happen is you don't care about the lick anymore. You've just got the concept under your fingers and it starts to become your vocabulary. Does that help? Does that make sense? Because if you're thinking about licks all the time, you're going to play licks and it's never going to sound like music. None of your favorite players, I'm imagining, play licks, or the ones that my least favorite players, whether they have great technique or not, are the ones who play licks. I just like the guys when you hear they're just playing, they're improvising. So hopefully that helps answer that question. So Keep on running over them, and then don't worry about if you've forgotten it, but maybe you feel like you've picked up something from it. All right. Any exercise, any suggestions for trill speed with the first and middle finger after shortening my guitar step? I've lost the trill speed over the last few months. Well, geez, it could be. You just have to isolate it and keep on doing it. Okay, this is a totally kind of off topic. And in that book, that's a word book here. In my new course, I talk about stretching because it's really important. And I've been going to, I was not that long ago, and it was really affecting my playing and my life mentally. Was I was having a lot of problems with my ring finger and my pinky, and I wasn't sure if it was like ulnar nerve stuff. And I'm playing, and like they're just not moving, just not, it's upsetting and tingling. And I'm like, oh no, man, what is going on? And I found a really great chiropractor who also does a thing called ART, active release therapy. Um, Shout out to Dr. Ron over at North Williamsburg Chiropractic. So there's a thing called ART and active therapy. So my point of this was just made me think about it. For me, it was muscle stress. Like it was my neck. So he would do these muscle release things that are agonizing. Like literally, he would pull your arm, like okay, move your arm while you're laying down. He's sticking his thumb like in your armpit, like in here, and it's brutal. Like it hurts so much. He's like, okay, move your arm. I couldn't move my arm. It hurt so much. You had to pull my arm, and you walk out of there like it's agonizing. But my point is posture and stretching and all that. Sitting like this with tech neck leaning forward. It's my neck, and so I went for a bunch of times in a row, and it's a day and night difference. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is it may be something like that. It is something to consider that if suddenly it's not as good as it used to be, depending how long you've been playing and how old you are and what your posture is like, all those things, how much you practice or what your day job is, that's a really real thing. Because I just thought, my time's up on the guitar. It's starting to feel like whatever the heck it was, or maybe something worse like carpal tunnel or all these things. He's like, no, it's just your neck and shoulders are just a mess. And, sometimes you feel like chiropractors like, yeah, I'll see you next week. This worked great, especially because that art stuff it's no nonsense. So I'm just bringing that into mind that, so I try to go at least once a month now, and it's been great. I haven't had any hand problems whatsoever. And trying to exercise a little bit, walking around, at least staying active, a big difference. So, yes, he did. All right. Okay, sorry. I'm clicking the wrong thing here. All right. Okay, what do you need to make a live jam? I'm sorry. Okay. That what you need to make a live jam record? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Sorry. What do I need to make a live jam record? Let me know what you mean. I find Jeff McEnroe to be very motivating. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Run down. Now, this is kind of funny. All right. If you're stuck at Watchtower Guitars, do you say there must be some kind of... Of course, it's named after Watchtower Guitar. At Watchtower, only the Watchtower. Steve, the owner's a big fan. Does olive oil help to stay motivated? My friend Romano, my dear friend from Romano in Italy, brought me, every time he comes from Italy, he brings me a tin, the big jar of in the tin of olive oil from Italy, and he on a plane. That's friendship for you. So I am eternally grateful. So he brought me again, and it's so good. Marfuga, very good. It's so good. I think we're about like a quarter way through the big thing. I'm using it a lot. Thanks, my friend. Is that your favorite guitar now? I cycle through them. I've got a number of guitars that I really love. In at the You got to grab one. It's going to be the 64. That's sort of my favorite one. Um, this is great. I absolutely love this guitar. But yeah, if there's got to be like just there's one, it's the 64. But I like switching them up. It's just fun. That keeps me motivated too. If you got a good guitar, sometimes you're like, I'm going to start playing that one now. One thing I would not do is to change guitars too much all the time. I think you want to learn how to get into a specific guitar because they're all very unique in their own way. My two Strats are both Strats, but they sound different enough, you know? So, um, there you go. Any advice in finding a group to play with? That's the hardest part for me. Yeah, I've got a few students, as Jason just said right after, um, Facebook local musician group. I would look into that. Sometimes, you if there's rehearsal spaces, or if you look, there's guys who put together jams, like guided jams. Um, I have a student in France who does that, and I have two students in France who do that, and they love it, you know. So I think that's one thing. If you look at if there's a local rehearsal studio, very often they'll do a guided jam because it's a good way for them to make money too, and it's fun, you know. So I think that's what I would suggest, and I think the Facebook thing I hadn't thought about that. That would be cool. Also, if you go to gigs, like if there's a jam night, if you go to that and just see other people, like, oh, you want to get together and jam. I think they're all there for a reason. You know what I mean? It's good. Um, Chris, but advice, motivate. You're unable to really get together with buddies like you used to. You should probably do something simple like a loop pedal. Yeah, loop pedals. I jam with a loop pedal all the time. The If you're comfortable with using a loop pedal, because sometimes if you don't get the loop right, it gets frustrating. But yeah, loop pedals. Um, the fun thing about like talking about jam with records is you're interacting with musicians, even though it might have been a record from it's not live to you, but there's interaction on a musical level if it's a good live record. Um, there you go. I'm playing 20 years and I still can't play a major scale over the neck. Why is that? You can do it. Anybody can do it. That stuff's easy. People are terrified about things like learning scales, like they think it's tough. It's not tough. It's not tough. Using it, applying a major scale into your song, that's a little more tough. But just sitting down and going, that's not tough. It's just memorization. And people have, I think I'm convinced it's a fear that people have. It's an irrational one. I'm convinced of it because, when you teach students and they finally get it together, like, this isn't really that hard. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's just memorization. Take one fingering a week. And then there's kind of five fingerings that interlock. Five fingerings. Learn the key of C. It's not that hard, but I understand where you're coming from. I've encountered so many people who have a problem with it. So it's not just you, but I think it's a mental state of mind that I've encountered more so than I have not. That people feel like it's overwhelming and they can't do it. And so they just have psyched themselves out. That's what I found throughout my 30 plus years of teaching professionally. That's totally the case. Yeah. Okay. So I kind of touched on this, which is interesting. Hand conditions like carpal tunnel are hugely limited. Is there anything you do to keep your hands healthy? Yes, 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 for sure. So I stretch and I go see a physical therapist or that art active release therapy. Um, that's made the biggest difference in those situations. It is, or any kind of deep tissue massage. If it doesn't hurt, it's not doing any good. Just the case, because you got to break down the scar tissue. And at first people talk about, you think it's like some sort of new agey thing. It's not at all. No, it's brutally painful, and you're just breaking down scar tissue and then elongating the muscle where it gets kind of tightened up, and you kind of break it down. And literally, this was really becoming problematic slowly over a few years. It just got to the point where my fingers were not moving right. They felt sluggish. And that's kind of a scary feeling. And so carpal tunnel, I don't, even unless you're there's what I've discovered is yes, you could have carpal tunnel specifically, and you may or may not. I don't know, but oftentimes those things are exacerbated, or my understanding. I'm not a doctor, by other things. If you got a job that's you're well, like picking chickens was like the one that was a really problem for people. Um, but or typing, but a lot of it comes from upper body, like your neck and back, and that's where mine was. Because I mean, I see pictures of myself when I'm playing. It's really frustrating, and so since going and getting this done, my posture has felt like I'm not leaning as forward as much, and I'm doing these stretches. I've got a band where you stretch back this way. So I'm trying to pull everything back this way because everything I do and everything we do in the world now brings us this way. It's our computers, it's our phone with our heads down, and that adds up. And you're playing guitar, you're looking down at your heads and hands this way. So I would say that, and I stretch, and but for me, stretching is big, um, but sometimes I need more help, and that's when I go to this guy. I'm trying to go pretty regularly. I mean, it does add up a little bit. Of course, it's not free, but it's not crazy. And if I budget it in, it's worthwhile because it's my job. You know. Oh, top chat. Thanks, man. Thank you. Thanks so much, Lucas. Great point on seeing shows. I'm coming to New York City on the 27th or 30th. Any gigs, live music venues you recommend I check out? Yeah, it depends. So there's lots of great show places in New York. Check out the Bitter End if you're into guitar. There's a lot of great, like Osnoy plays there pretty regularly. There's a bunch of other guys who play there. Good place to, It's a fun place to go see music. In Brooklyn is a place called Skinny Dennis, which is kind of like a honky tonk bar. It's really fun. Just a great vibe there. Smalls, great jazz room. Excuse me. Place uptown called Smoke. There's Jalopy, which is cool. And in Red Hook, Brooklyn, there's a place called Sonny's. Just when you get here, check out Time Out, Time Out New York. That's really good. I don't know any particular gigs going on those days, but I would, those venues are good. I have to say it's not kind of like it was the 55 bar, like the few staples are not there anymore, which is a bummer because if you know what's the 55 bar, you're always going to see some great jazz. But Smalls is like that. Like I said, Smoke. Boy, I'm kind of forgetting some of the other places right off the top of my head. Put me on the spot. But check out Time Out, and that's really helpful. That's what I do. Like who's playing? Let's go and look at Time Out or bands in town. Because there's a bunch of places in New York, and I keep on forgetting names. I just go to them. But thank you so much for the top chat, Lucas, and enjoy your time in New York. Here we go. BV, what you got to say here? One player gets a lot of unwarranted stick. John Mayer is extremely good, very dynamic pick attack. John Mayer is great. I mean, yeah, the people who rag on John Mayer are just flat out jealous. That's what it comes down to. I'm not how do I say I'm not a huge fan? I think he's great. Musically, it's not my bag, and being a little, older than him, sometimes when I hear the influence, I'm not knocking him. He's never really got me, but he's a great guitar player, and he's done, like Bonamassa, he's done a huge amount for the instrument, especially keeping it going. He's really great. Yeah. Also check out Madison Cunningham. She's awesome. Songs are great too. All right. Run through. Sorry, I'm looking at the questions and stuff. Yeah, Lord of the Rings extended version is perfection. Absolutely. Especially if you're a big fan of the book, Yeah. You got a question here. I'm looking at your site courses. I'm intermediate blues level player. What would you suggest? Well, it depends what your knowledge is. A lot of the courses that are in the channel right now, the jam guitar lessons, I would say the foundational blues licks course. I think that's cool. If you want to build up your chops, the new one I think would be nice. But to get the guitar together, I think, well, I don't know where you're at, but I've found pretty much across the board, Nobody knows their triads. So the triad courses, I think, will help you. They'll help everyone. It may not be helping with your blues immediately, but it'll help you get your guitar playing. It'll help you to be a better guitar player. That I think I can say. So thank you. It's hard to say because I don't know what you play like, but foundational blues licks, I think that's cool. And the repeated licks. Maybe some of the guys who have some of the stuff could chime in and give you a suggestion. I know I should have, this is what you need, but it's hard. And I don't want you to think like, I don't need this. I found you can never go wrong with like the blues lick thing, like that idea of building your blues vocabulary. All right. Thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. Just guard. Any tips on distraction? I can be focused on something and then, hey, look, a squirrel. I'm the same way. Set your timer on your phone for 3 minutes. Practice something for 3 minutes, and then have another timer because you have the number of timers in there for 2 minutes. Set your little fancy Apple Watch if you've got one. 3 minutes. Practice one thing for 3 minutes. I'm not saying practice a fast lick for 3 minutes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, all right, I'm going to work on playing changes of a blues. I'm going to work on this or that. One thing for 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a long time sometimes. If you're sitting there doing like, if you don't have that together, working out that by ear is brutal. Well, brutal on the guitar, there's lots of worse brutal things in the world right now working on a major scale. But that's a lot of mind focus. So if you just say, all right, I'm going to do it for 3 minutes, and then that 3 minutes is done, that works great for me, especially if there's something I'm trying to get under my fingers. Just banging it over and over again, and then I start to get distracted. So I'm like, oh man, if I can't practice for 3 minutes, which in today's world is a long time, that works great for me. That's how I studied for stuff at college. An old teacher gave me that trick, and it works great for me. Yeah, for sure. Repeated licks part 2, please. Okay. Nice. I'm glad you guys dug it. I'm going to do kind of like a hard rock soloing thing where I start to use some of these. I put this one out because I wanted people to build their technique and use it as an idea. And then I'm going to put out some things that, okay, you've got some of those licks in your back pocket. Let's try to mix them into some solos and things and point them out. Back to Chris. That's a good point here. Thank you. I used to be able to play it until I got serious, better stuff. Now, mechanics for the clunky. I should sweep it. I'm talking about in a course things like sweep picking, which really can really freak people out. They're like, sweep picking, it's just economy picking. It's just making things easier to do. So I get to some of these questions. Do you find more value in playing over backing tracks or learning covers? Yes. Both. One thing about backing tracks, though, I do want to be really clear on, and I talk about anybody who takes lessons, and I say in all my courses, if you're jamming over a 5-minute long A blues background track, you are going to run out of ideas. Who solos for 5 minutes over a background track? Who takes a 5-minute solo on a blues without a band interacting? So a lot of times background tracks, I make them. The ones I give away, or on the site, you got the free link from here. Those are with a live band. Those are real. But for the most part, to make really great background tracks like that, it's really hard. So you just end up looping. You make a 24 bar track and you end up looping it. So it's easier to do at home. Don't try to solo for 5 minutes and then get bummed that you can't come up with some cool ideas. You're going to run ideas. So, I'm going to solo for 12 bars and do the best solo I can, 12 bars. Okay, now I'm going to make it 24 bars. So sometimes the full solo idea is too much. You're going to get that's going to be discouraging as opposed to motivating. You know what I mean? So, cubital, that is cubital syndrome. Yes, it is, isn't it? It's not fun at all. No, it stinks. But I'm psyched that it was not cubital. Like everything gets kind of trapped under here, right here, as opposed to carpal tunnel, which I've had some issues with that in the past. But I found he was saying it's more motivated. It's more in your arms and shoulders. And as soon as you started doing that, it all pretty much went away, which has been awesome. Um, uh, do you have to relearn concepts in different key scales? It'll click someday. Yeah, yeah, you have to do everything. There's no shortcut. So choose the keys that you do. You know what I mean? Like that you're gonna use. G, choose the rock keys. And then the more you do it, the better you're gonna get at it, and the more comfortable it's gonna be. And the more you can expand upon it. It'll start to snowball after a while in a good way. Like, you learn a few different keys, it'll start to pick up. It's got to stick with it. But choose the guitar keys. G, C, D, A flat major is not going to be one you're going to be playing around in that much. So lay off that one. You only have a little bit of time. Yeah, this is interesting right here. It's called carpal tunnel syndrome. It's cubital is the one I had. Carpal. It is like having like a break in the fingers. Like, yeah, like just things aren't working right. But it's been getting so much better as a result of that. Okay. Neck and back. Yes, it's definitely my neck and back. All right, let me do some questions here. If it's not Scottish, it's crap. Well, that is the case. Yeah, it is. This is very common. Everybody's chiming in. Yep, yeah, it's cubital tunnel syndrome. But yes, the cool thing is it's this compression up here as opposed to, fortunately, any kind of thing too bad in here. All right. How do you know when you're, oh, that's a good question. How do you know when you're ready to start jamming with other people? Right away. Don't wait. Don't wait. Seriously. Just dive in. Get somebody to just jam with you. Even if you stink. Even if you think you stink, just do it. For sure. Your advice on buffers in the right place in the pedal board makes a big difference in sound. Absolutely. I put one before, and I don't have any treble bleeds, so I definitely need a buffer. Mike Lando talks about that too. Vertex effects. Watch any of Mason's videos. He talks about it all the time. Do you replace your small patch cables occasionally? Only when they break, and I'm really using. I don't use solderless cables; they always break. I'm using, the. They're all attached. Hold on. I'm using the EBS. I really like these. I haven't had one break yet. So anyway, I just shake them every once in a while, see if everything's good, but those are great. All right. I got to go walk my dogs. My wife is giving me the stink eye. It's a 5 o'clock dog walking. Enjoying your live streams very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Go. If they want to learn modern jazz after I gave up to 3 full-time jobs. Now, I'm not sure where to continue in which genre. No goals, any advice? What just turns you on, man? Modern jazz, it's a lot of work. I don't mean that like you should be scared of it, but it's a lot of work. Jazz is, be good at anything is a lot of work, but learning jazz with all the changes and all the stuff, that's a much different discipline. One is not better than the other, but one is definitely much more demanding intellectually and requires much more time than being a really great blues guitar player. And I don't mean that in any judgmental thing. It just is the facts because I've tried both. I'm not saying playing blues is easy. You have to put as much time into your own thing. But with jazz, the vocabulary is much larger. It's a lot more intellectual study. And that's not for everyone. And it's not, you have to love it. You have to love it. And I was a jazz major and I didn't love it. So I'm okay with it. So I just like to be a jazzy influenced blues rock guy. So, all right. Let's run down. Lots of questions. Lots of people still here. Thank you, everyone. All right, 3 minutes. Starting to realize that less is more. I went through phases of practicing for hours and hours and not productive. Yeah. Practicing smart is way better than practicing a lot. But if you practice a lot and you practice smart, that's really good. But yeah, just picking up a guitar and doing these binges of a few hours at a time, you're going to get much more uh, results out of shorter practice periods, regular shorter ones with practicing with, I like to call, I should say, practicing with intent. It's really important. You practice intent. I'm going to practice this today, and that's what I'm going to work on. That's what I'm going to work on. All right. Well, I want to say thanks to everyone for here as always. And BV, thank you so much for doing everything as always. I really appreciate it. Once again, you guys are the best. Thanks. I'm going to have a video out this Friday. Go over to JM Guitar Lessons. Once again, today was brought to you by my good friends at Watchtower Guitars. Go check them out. Go check out their website. And sometimes not everything's on their website. So if you have something in mind, definitely go check it out. They've got a bunch of VEMRAM pedals in stock. The Booty G. They've got the Shanks ODS one. And they have all pre-owned PRSs for 15% off over at Watchtower Guitars. So definitely check them out. They are a great bunch of guys. And they won't steer you wrong. And they always will choose a guitar for you. They'll just let you know, which is what I love. I could just choose a guitar. All right. Once again, 50% off of my blues rock repeated licks over at Jam Guitar Lessons. You can use the link below or the link. And I just purchased your minor triad courses and blues licks course, and they're both very, very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it, as long as my True Fire stuff as well. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, BV. I will see you guys next week. And guys are the best.